Hello, my name is Elaine Sloan Moen, and I've been a member of Colonial Church for almost 40 years. I'd like to share some of my thoughts and personal experiences as I reflect on Martin Luther King Jr. Day this year. I grew up in a suburb of New York City on Long Island, and after graduating from an all-white high school in 1962, I started college in another white suburb just above Manhattan. I had little opportunity to learn about the history or experience of African Americans as I grew up, but that started to change as the civil rights movement was at full steam during my college years. I began reading books by many African American writers, including Martin Luther King, to better understand this historic moment and movement. I had the privilege of seeing and hearing MLK up close and in person when I attended a speech he gave at a community meeting in my college town. And I had the unforgettable experience of joining with 250,000 Black and white citizens who participated in the March on Washington in August 1963, where we heard him deliver his "I Have a Dream" speech. During those years, I watched TV coverage of peaceful civil rights demonstrators who faced police dogs, fire hoses, and gunfire in the streets and on campuses in their quest for equality and voting rights. But I also witnessed the historic passage of the Civil Rights Bill of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The 60s were a turbulent and violent time, epitomized by the assassinations of John Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, and Martin Luther King. Despite the horrific violence and heartbreaking backlash that accompanied each step forward, I believed we as a country were united in seeking racial justice and that things could only get better. Fast forward now 50 years. The shock and revulsion of witnessing the murder of George Floyd in this city and the awakening across the country and the world that followed made me realize I still had a lot to learn, and we all still had a lot to wrestle with as a country and as a church. I appreciated the efforts of our ministers, Sarah and Christian, who offered films and classes and background readings to help us process what we were witnessing and discern how we got here. A film series called African Americans, Many Rivers to Cross, informed me about the 12-year Reconstruction period following the Civil War, when Blacks began to make a way, literally out of no way, to start schools, businesses, communities, and even managed to send 17 African Americans to serve in the United States Congress. I also learned about the much longer Jim Crow era that followed and lasted through the middle of the 20th century, when a backlash of established laws and community practices allowed Blacks to be discriminated against and terrorized with impunity. I was appalled and ashamed to see pictures of Christians, including children, in their Sunday best, smiling and streaming out of their church services to watch lynchings of Blacks in the town square. But those programs and another, the Black Church, This Is Our Story, enlightened me as well about the incredible courage, resourcefulness, and deep faith of the many Black leaders and clergy who led their people through such unspeakable times of trauma and tragedy. Books by two Black theologians, The Cross and the Lynching Tree by James Cone, and Jesus and the Disinherited by Howard Thurman, gave me new insights into the healing power of Jesus as a suffering Savior. These programs and readings helped me begin to understand the profound and enduring meaning of that rallying cry we sang in the 60s, "We shall overcome." Recently, I turned to a book by Martin Luther King called Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? The book was published in 1968, the year he was assassinated, but it is remarkably and regrettably very relevant today as we see chaos in our capital and concerns about vote suppression and certification in states around the country. It explains the roots of gaping racial disparities like those in education, home ownership, and wealth in cities like our own, the legacy of laws and practices that intentionally and systematically destroyed family structures and advancement opportunities, not only 400 years of slavery, but also during the Jim Crow period and beyond. In its truth-telling and balanced way, it lays out in practical detail what can be done by blacks, by whites, and by all of us together to repair the bonds of community and restore justice. It might be a good book for our church to study together in these days. Why am I saying all of this? Because I think we as individuals and as a church need to understand how we got here before we can follow faithfully in the footsteps of leaders like Martin Luther King to become allies and partners in progress with our black neighbors. I have a dream that one day we will all acknowledge and learn about the past history of our own community and our country so that we can reconcile and rectify its impact on lives today. I have a dream that we will acknowledge and celebrate the incredible courage and faith of our black brothers and sisters who have truly overcome the greatest of odds, time and again. I have a dream that we will learn from and join with black leaders in this city who are living in and working to strengthen their communities. Like Sandra Samuels, who leads the Northside Achievement Zone that supports over 1,000 young scholars and their families. Like Aselo Young, who leads Urban Homeworks, a faith-based nonprofit that provides affordable housing and home ownership opportunities to hundreds of families and works to build the neighborhoods around them. Like Lewis King, who leads the Summit Academy that provides training to hundreds of students every year to prepare them for good-paying careers, and so many others. I have a dream that our church will join hearts and hands with black churches in our community to welcome all the beloved, to wrestle with the disparities between biblical principles and realities in our community, to risk the messy path of faith courageously, like our black brothers and sisters do every day, and that we would do good for Christ's sake, together. I have a dream that despite so many incidences and evidences to the contrary, others will know we are Christians by our love.